There's a lot happening with New Jersey's child welfare system. We want to help you make sense of it and share our story. This is DCF on the Air.
This is DCF on the Air, and I'm Jason Bukowski. Welcome back to Season 2, or maybe it's Season 1B of DCF on the Air, which is a podcast focused on putting the spotlight on some of the transformational work happening at the New Jersey Department of Children and Families that people might not be familiar with. This podcast is about elevating awareness and inviting you, our listeners, into the conversations taking place as we rethink and reimagine what it means to be a family-serving system. And as we welcome you back after a brief hiatus this past summer, we thought we might flip the script just a little bit. And instead of talking about concepts that you might not be familiar with, we're going to talk about services that practically everyone is probably already familiar with, though our philosophy and our approach may be surprising to some. In New Jersey, DCF, through the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, is the state's primary foster and adoption agency. And when I say those words, foster care and adoption, for many of you, that may conjure a recognizable idea or maybe even an image. The fact is, depictions or representation of foster care and adoption, they're all around us in pop culture or in the media. Some of us might know someone who was adopted or in foster care. They can be our friends, our neighbors, even our own family members. But when we talk about foster care and adoption, it also brings up an aspect of our work that isn't nearly as positive: out-of-home placement and family separation. In New Jersey, we recognize that removing a child from their family, even if it's done with the best intentions towards preserving the child's immediate safety, that act imparts trauma, not just on the parents, but also on the children being removed. As a system, we've really tried to minimize our use of out-of-home placement. In 2003, when we first embarked on efforts to reform child welfare in New Jersey, there were 13,000 children in out-of-home placement. Today, there are less than 3,000, and we have the lowest rate of out-of-home placement in the entire nation. So we're keeping more families together, and we're supporting them in their homes and in their communities. And we found that we can do that and ensure that we can maintain one of the lowest rates of child maltreatment in the entire country. We're not sacrificing safety for family connections. We can actually have both. However, there are some instances, despite ours and maybe the family's best efforts, where out-of-home placement is still a necessary safety intervention. When out-of-home placements do occur, when we can't keep the family safely together, we're turning to kinship placements, where children are placed in familiar surroundings, either with an extended family member or a close family friend. In 2021, for the first time in our system's history, we had more children placed with kin in New Jersey than in traditional foster care settings. The goal of our system is always to reunify the family in cases when out-of-home care was necessary. But in those cases where there's no safe path to reunification, we're looking to adoption to create a safe, loving, and permanent home for the child or children. Joining us for this episode of DCF on the Air is Clinton Page, Deputy Director of the Division of Child Protection and Permanency. And I'm going to turn it over to him to talk a little bit about his areas of responsibility and some of his history with the department. Clinton?
Thanks, Jason. And so I came fresh out of law school and came over and got a job in the New Jersey Attorney General's office as a Deputy Attorney General. And so I'll never forget the day. It was Monday when I officially started. They came up and gave me 85 cases, and they were like, hey, good luck in court, right? So it was a sink or swim kind of thing, but it's what I wanted. I wanted to be a trial lawyer, and I got that experience. So I represented the agency actually for a number of years, 5 or 6 years before I guess I liked the agency so much, I decided to jump on board and get a position here. And so using my kind of legal background, I obtained a job as a legal specialist here in DCF and was fortunate enough to be promoted to the Director of Legal Affairs, where I was for 8 years. And then 1 year ago, I decided to make a big shift in my career and actually go into CP&P. And like you said, my current position is the Deputy Director over Licensing, Adoption, and Resource. And so, thank you for having me today. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for coming to talk about the work that we're doing around foster care and adoption in New Jersey.
Yes.
So as we start off the conversation today, I kind of alluded to it a little bit in our opener, but can you talk about DCF's philosophy around foster care and out-of-home placement? And I know we're using this as a safety intervention less and less. What role do longtime foster parents have within our current system?
So, to talk about the philosophy, and I know you touched on some of this in your remarks, but we're at a point now where over 90% of families are really serviced in home. Family separations at an all-time low. If you look at our numbers, hovering around 3,000 kids in out-of-home placement, which is a tremendous success that we continue to share with the staff across CP&P, that because they're the ones doing the work every day. And so when you talk to them, and I've been fortunate enough to get in front of them and talk to them about it, what they say is a number of things. They say that we know better now, right? We recognize the trauma that a removal happens. They say they're better at having honest conversations with families about what is impacting the daily operations of the household, and they look to supports. I mean, they want to stabilize families. And so, and also in addition to what you said up front is that, there are unfortunately times when kids have to be separated from their families. And so it's been ingrained in everyone's mind in this agency that you're going to look to kin first. You're going to look to family. And it's even 2 years ago, we passed a law now that was always our policy, but the law now is that we're looking to kin first. And so when they do that, and unfortunately there's not a family member to step up, then of course we turn to our resource parents, our partners. Okay. And so there's been a lot of, I'm going to say anecdotal discussions by resource parents thinking that we don't still value their partnership. And I'm going to tell you up front today, that's absolutely not true. I mean, they serve a huge purpose and they have a tremendous future here with DCF. There will be times when we cannot find family and we need them, right? And so they play a major role. We're going to probably get to this a little later, but they're part of the village for these kids to help them heal, to help them process what has happened, to support them in their day-to-day activities. And so to anyone that, out there that's seeing this today, that feels like they might not be as valued because of the kin effort, I say that's absolutely not true. And we need you as part of the DCF team.
Yeah, and we definitely appreciate the people that do step up to provide that safe temporary home for youth that need it. For a long time, I think foster care and adoption have been very much linked, at least in our language within the department and probably within a lot of people's psyche. And it seemed that there were many families that became foster parents, I think, with the goal of or as a path towards adoption. Are these two ideas linked, and are they distinctly separate? And I'm also wondering if you're entering in as a foster parent, should you do so with an expectation that someday you'll be able to adopt the foster child that's in your placement?
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to handle that question is I'm going to say they are linked, but there's an asterisk there. And so to answer your other point, it's really around coming in the door with expectations that sometimes these cases do lead to an adoption, but also being mindful of your expectations, because to just throw another statistic out there, really over 65% of kids that enter out-of-home placement end up being reunified. Okay. And so you're a bridge there, right? You're a pathway. You're a pathway to the way home. And so if you come into the door with just an expectation that you're really just looking to increase your family through adoption, you're going to see that not only is the process to permanency very long, but again, really that's a much smaller population of cases and kids that actually come into care end up, ultimately being adopted. And so what I'll say is that, a lot of families, and we're doing a very good job of trying to explain what the process is like up front. So when they're making their application, right, we're having conversations about them. And to put another plug out there, later on in September this month, we're having an event in Camden where we're inviting, resource parents to come and attend because, for some of them, it's been a long time since we've had the opportunity to get in front of them and talk to them about where the agency's at right now and show them actually the population of kids that we have. And so I think it's the right time. We did one in Newark a couple months ago, and it was very successful. And we got some positive feedback. So this is going to be a larger one. We're going to do it at the Kroc Center in Camden, but it's geared towards kind of answering some of those questions that you just said, like where is the agency going? What is the pathway? And the other thing I'll say, Jason, is that, there are kids right now that are eligible to be adopted. So if someone is looking immediately to increase their family through the adoption process, you can go and adopt U.S. kids. And we have kids from New Jersey that are up there right now that you can make, initiate an application. and proceed to adoption through that path too.
Yeah. But I think that's a great statistic. 65% of cases are reunified. And I think that's our goal as
Of course,
as an agency.
that's a success that we view. And, we would want to see that number higher, to be very frank, because we do, even when we separate families, we put in lots of services and supports and help facilitate visitation and contact and things like that to get the child back home.
Let's talk a little bit about kinship care, because I know that this is now a priority for the department. What are the differences between kinship care in New Jersey and what we consider to be like a traditional foster home placement? And what are some of the benefits to going the kinship care route?
Okay. So let me toot my own horn for a second. Right. So,
hey, that's what it's for.
Right. So what I'm really happy about is some of the statistics we've seen in the increases in kin in the last couple of years. And so I'll lead with this. I said in 2022, 57% of kids were in kinship care. And that's a tremendous increase from, even if you go back 5 years, we're in a 30% range. And so that's a ton of effort. Not by myself, again, I'm going to say it's because of the staff, right, that are doing it day to day. And going the extra mile to assess, to contact, using social media, whatever we can, when a child is entering out of home placement, to make contact with connections for that child, they're doing. They're exhausting all their options, which is excellent, right? And I think we do that because the research supports it. I mean, if you think about the benefits of kinship care, you can look at placement stability as where I naturally go to immediately. And when I say that, I mean moves for kids, right? Kids do better, I think we can all say, with routine, knowing where they are, stability. And so the research suggests that when they're with someone they know, a kinship, they have better stability, meaning they don't have to suffer as many moves and suffer, the trauma that goes along with being moved from place to place to place. And so that's a big benefit. Now, the other things I'll point to is really around behavioral and mental health outcomes for kids. And this really goes hand in hand with stability, as you can imagine, because as anyone is, right? Having anxiety about what's going to happen to yourself, where you're going to be, what's the routine going to be like? Is the person going to be nice to me? What's my bedroom look like? All of those things impact a child having to be moved from over and over again. And so I even think about, myself and my own kids, and like, if something happened, where would they? I would want them to go to somewhere that they know. Like, I have 2 brothers, right, Jason? So like, I would rather they know my brothers, they know their personalities, they know their houses, all of that, right? And so you think about things like that, for even every single kid that has to be separated from their family. And then permanency. And so that's a term, right? And not a whole lot of people, when I became a lawyer, I didn't even know what the term permanency was at first, but you're looking at, a permanent placement for a child, someone that's I always like to point to Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like someone that has a place to go for holidays, for dinners and things like that. And so kids that go with kin have higher levels of permanency. And what does that mean? To me, it means, again, we go back to that reunification target that you just talked about. 65% of kids reunified. So when they're with their family, it can be typically easier to maintain contact, to maintain visits. There's motivation there when they're with their family. And so the studies suggest that when they're going to someone that they know, that person also knows the child's parents, there's higher levels, meaning reunification can be achieved for the child at a quicker pace. So
I think one of the things that we don't typically talk about, we always talk about the benefits to the child, and I think that's appropriate because they're the ones that we're trying to support in these out-of-home placements. But even for the biological parents, just anecdotally, I know we get a lot of calls from parents that are concerned that their child is with a stranger.
Yeah.
They don't know who their child's with. They don't know the routine. They don't know. And then putting that biological parent at ease a little bit. Oh, they're with your mom. They're with your dad. They're with your uncle. That allows them to focus on what they need to do to heal, to create the factors that are necessary to allow for reunification.
Yeah, I mean, look, 100%, I agree with you. I mean, think about it. If you are a parent, or knowing where your child is, being able to contact them, knowing the environment that they're in, the person, it's hugely important. And Jason, so since you said that, I'm going to plug something else. So we have a pilot in Essex right now that we call comfort calls. And so with kinship families, we want to believe that the contact is more frequent, and it's, like routine phone calls and contact can just exist in and of itself. But with our resource parents that are unrelated, we want to also foster an environment like that. And so what we're exploring is what this pilot is around comfort calls, which is really having the agency kind of step in to help foster and nurture a relationship between an unrelated resource parent and the parent, so that there is more comfort there. They understand and they can talk to the child and kind of know what their daily routine is, what they're going through, how was school today, all of those things. Because if the communication can exist between them successfully, like you just said, it has a huge impact on the outcome of the case.
Absolutely. And yeah, I know that, we talked a little bit about this being the goal of the system, that we are able to reunify families. Beyond sort of setting up those scenarios where a foster provider can kind of be that support to the family. And I'm almost thinking like post reunification.
Yeah.
What other services are offered from the department to support families post reunification to kind of keep them successful and keep them thriving?
Yeah. And so, again, I'll point to the fact that we got to reunification is a good success, but there's a ton more work to do, right? As you can imagine, right? So the day of reunification is something to celebrate, but we need to stay on top of the family, make sure we're still supporting them. So, there is, as many of the people probably watching this know, there's a children's system of care, which really encompasses all the behavioral health needs for the youth and also helps them and the family through therapeutic interventions. So I'll point there initially, of course, that there. But in addition to that, there's really going to be continued ongoing services for the parents. So, we do see the success of the reunification, but we want to make sure, for instance, if it was a substance use disorder, we want to make sure that they are still in their treatment, right, and recovering and moving in that direction, right? If it's domestic violence, there could be domestic violence counseling for the parents. So those services are going to continue post reunification. There's also family preservation services, which we call FPS. And that's really can be both. People think that that's only for preventions of removals, and it is, right? But it's also can be utilized post reunification. So when the children are back, this service can be put in a household to make sure every day, somebody will go out there to make sure that things are successful and that things are operating well. And so that's another service we can put. There's in community support. So there's family success centers, there's home visiting programs. And then you get your CP&P worker, right? And you're going to have, your permanency worker that's going to help support you. There's informal supports, right? They're going to have their own families, their own neighbors, the people they have connections with that kind of all come together to hopefully continue that success and keep the child with the parent.
Yeah, and I think especially with a kinship placement, those relationships aren't severed after reunification. Right. So you still have that kinship provider to kind of fall back on, saying, look, I'm struggling connecting with my child. What can you recommend? How can I, improve my own relationship? But I'm wondering for those traditional foster care placements, and I think we talked a little bit about the pilot up in Essex County and the comfort calls, but how can those traditional resource parents, the foster care parents, be a resource to the entire biological family after reunification?
So Jason, that's a loaded question, because even in your question, you're talking about the premise of them being a support to the whole family, which again is something that is a mindset that we want to foster in all of our resource parents. It's not just that they support the child, it's that they support the whole family. So your question starts with that premise, which is important to acknowledge and make sure that that's the mentality of the person when they enter and partner with us to serve the kids, right? And so for me, some of the most important things is around viewing yourself as a partner, viewing yourself as a mentor, viewing yourself as a motivator when it comes to open communication. So visitation is so key to getting to a reunification, which is a success for us. And so not being a partner with us involves you going above and beyond to make sure that child, whether it's a phone call, right? Whether it's, social media, whatever it is, or it's, we want in person, right? Like whether it's at a park or wherever, like helping foster visitation is going to be key to us, right? 5-minute conversations at night, whenever before bedtime, you think 5 minutes is not, 5 minutes can make a huge difference to a parent. Being able to talk every day, because again, it's a reminder that, they're okay. And it's a reminder that I need to be motivated. I need to do what I need to do so that, my child can come back. And so today's world, I think, Jason, you know this, like with all that's happened, there's more isolation, there's more anxiety than I think ever. And so those little phone calls, those little things, and then I'll also point to sibling connection. So we recently have a new law here in New Jersey around the Sibling Bill of Rights, which is going to help kind of formalize what we want to believe has already been practiced around best. So it's not only being a resource to the child and putting a shelter in a house. It's about making sure that they maintain those connections with their parents, with their siblings, with their friends. And so if the person comes in the door and really has the mindset to be a support, a resource to the whole family, then that's exactly what we're looking for. And those are the people that, are tremendous to help improve the system and to help keep kids connected and happy.
And we've been able to feature some of those stories, through the DCF social media of, post-reunification, foster mom and bio mom have developed like an amazing friendship and can call on each other for help whenever necessary. So I think that really is sort of the epitome of what we're looking to do here. You mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but I want to give some time for us to talk about the Join the Village campaign.
Sure.
Because I know that we put a lot of work into this. We've worked with you to kind of develop that slogan and the logo. Talk a little bit about what it means to join the village and why we're using that now as sort of our marketing materials around foster care.
So it's huge for me. And I want to thank you and your team again for helping us get there. Okay. We had a slogan before. And to me, that slogan didn't really encompass what we were really looking to do. And I know we've talked a lot about this today, but I can't emphasize enough that we are looking for individuals and people to come partner with us to be part of a village, right? Because everybody knows the slogan, right? It takes a village, right? And so join the village is our slogan. And what I'll tell you is that in the child welfare system, it can't be any more clear that it really takes a lot of people for the successful of an outcome for a family and for a child. And as you think about the people that are involved, and it's our court partners, it's kin, it's the communities, it's coaches, it's teachers, it's mentors, everyone. And of course, like the resource parent plays a huge role in that. And so, the fact that we've gotten to this place where we can acknowledge that the resource parents need to join a village, join our team, be the way home for kids to effectuate what we talked about, that 65% reunification, and we want to see it even higher, is tremendous. And I'm really happy that this is the message now and that this is what we're putting out to the public as we kind of move forward. And we're in a need, Jason, like we're in a need of getting more resource parents to the table. Because I think that the pandemic and things have kind of impacted that. People are kind of fearful having a lot of people in their homes. And so there is a need for us to recruit more homes. And I want you to know that I appreciate, the work that you put into this and your team in getting there.
Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today about really the great work that's happening through your folks to allow for a safe and temporary home for youth that need it and to create a pathway. I think that's so important. And I just want to say on behalf of the entire department, thank you to the resource home providers, resource home parents and families for all you do to support children during a crisis with a temporary, safe, and loving home. Your work is so very much appreciated by all of us here at DCF. In the next episode of DCF on the Air, we're going to talk with Carrie Ann Henry from our DCF Office of Housing and how we're integrating an overdue conversation about the housing needs of families and young adults transitioning from the child welfare system into our future work to become a child and family supporting system. Whether it's pushing the boundaries of what a child welfare system can do and can be, or rethinking some of our core operations like adoption and foster care, there is so much exciting work happening here in New Jersey, and it's really our privilege to be able to share that with all of you. Thanks as always for tuning in, and on behalf of the DCF Office of Communications and Public Affairs and my producers, this is Jason Pikowski signing off. Tune in next time for more DCF on the Air.